everyone, Caden here. We had such an awesome time this past Friday, and just so thankful for you all to show up and hang out, enjoy a Padre game, as well as honestly just be together. It was so fun to see your faces, to be in person, and I can't wait for Drive-In Church this upcoming Friday. So make sure to sign up and join that. Well, we're going to jump right into it. We are in our Tuesday Talk series, Family Matters Part 3. And I'm extremely excited to just share briefly about this topic. What I'm really going to cover and look at when it comes to our family and when it comes to the reality that we're all in families is that our families are going to change. And I think we can all agree that change is inevitable. And I think for most of us, if you're like me, I like change when I know what's changing and when I'm kind of aware or I can expect the change. But the reality of life and the reality of a lot of changes is that they are usually and can be very unexpected. A saying that you'll hear me say quite often is, I think one of the great adages of life is to expect the unexpected. And so I just want to get real personal with you and share just quick about a little bit about my family and an unexpected change that happened to me about 5 years ago. I was 23, almost 24, and my parents, after 24 years of marriage, decided to separate, which ultimately resulted in divorce. And man, we all know someone, if it isn't ourselves, we all know someone who's been through a divorce. But man, I remember distinctively remembering when you're on the field for kind of an image there, when you're actually the one who's going through it, it's a whole different ballgame. It's a whole different animal than walking with a friend or someone you know go through divorce. And so we're jumping into just our talk this evening about change and the fact that your family changes, and when your family changes, and I'm not wishing divorce or anything like that, but when your family changes, maybe a sibling will get married or your family will grow in a unique way. But when that change happens, because it's going to happen in some capacity, your mindset matters. And so we're going to take a look from actually the book of Ecclesiastes, which has been known to have been written by Solomon, the wisest man in all the Bible, and he wrote Proverbs and was just a very wise man. And he talks in Ecclesiastes about a lot of things. And so when we look at and when we're aware, the reality is we're all in a time of extreme change. Just a few months back, just a year ago, you weren't in front of a Zoom screen for English class, you were in the classroom. And so that was a very unexpected change. And so this doesn't just relate to family, but I'm kind of going to lean into the family aspect of when your family changes or when the dynamics in your family change, your mindset matters and how you look at the world and how you look at God matters. And so like I said, Solomon, really wise, famous guy, says in Ecclesiastes 3, and I'm going to read, kind of zip through it, but Ecclesiastes 3, 1 through 8, there is a time for everything. You maybe have heard this. And a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and sometimes a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. And like I said, Solomon is letting us know that everything will change at some point or another. It's inevitable. Change is going to happen. Whether you expect it or not expect it, change is the one constant that I can promise you will happen in life that you already know. And what I am fascinated by this passage and what I want to remind you of is there's a time for everything. And I kind of look at this reading of scripture, I was like, man, kind of pros and cons. There's like time when rejoicing is appropriate. But then on the flip side of that coin, there's a time when grieving is really relevant. Would I rather rejoice? Absolutely, than grieve. But I would much rather grieve when it's the time to grieve and not rejoice when it's the time to grieve. I mean, just how inappropriate would it be to go to a funeral and then just start making jokes and laughing? Like, what we're getting at is there is a time for all of these things. And you and I are not the dictators of that time. You and I have to react appropriately to whatever life might be throwing at us. And as life is throwing at us and God's allowing those things to happen, He is using them to shape and mold us. And I think more times than not, you want to be someone who's mature, act appropriately to change and to the times that you find yourself in. Be honest with yourself, be present in the moment, whether you want to be or not. I know for me, I like to run away from pain. I don't want to experience a lot of pain. I just would rather flee from it, but that's not mature. When I'm going through something that requires you to deal with uncomfortable feelings, we need to go through those things. We need to grieve well. We need to love well in those times. And so since we can't stop change and we can't control people, because I think that's kind of the next thing, is like, man, I can't stop these things from happening, and they're definitely not all bad. This isn't a negative talk. It's just things are going to change, and there'll be some of them might be expected change. Like when you graduate high school, it's expected that you go to the next step, whether it be a job, whether it be school, whether it be a leap year, whatever it is. That's expected change. But unexpected change, like I mentioned in the beginning, man, I would have never thought my parents would have split up after 24 years. That just wasn't on my radar. But just because I didn't expect it doesn't mean it didn't happen, and it doesn't mean that I don't need to deal with it in a healthy, appropriate way. And so what can we do when people and things around us we're not in control of? And I think what we can do is we can change the way we look at change. Perspective, I'm always bringing up perspective, that we can change our perspective on the way we look at change. And so when your family changes, your mindset matters. And so first, I think just recognizing and understanding that change is inevitable. It's going to happen. Embrace it. The second big thing, I think, is that we know that God is with us, or you know that God is with you amidst the change. And then lastly, I think this one is so powerful, and I've seen it work in my own life and the lives of a lot of students and leaders, is trust that God can use the change to change you. And I think this is the kicker. I think this is so much a part of growing and walking with Jesus. Oftentimes, the best way to grow is in the change, and it's usually the uncomfortable, painful change where God is really bringing you through. So I just want to remind you that understand that change will happen, know that God is with you, and trust that God can use the change to change you. And so without question, change is difficult, especially unexpected change. And especially when it comes to family or people that we've been around our entire lives. Know that you're not alone because God is with you, and know that God can use that change to change you and make you more like His Son and make you more like the person that you ultimately want to be, which is a person who loves and honors God and His Son Jesus. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll see you next week for another Tuesday Talk.